Good evening and welcome to the 2020 Fresno Speaks Virtual Community Town Hall hosted by the Fresno County Civic Engagement Table. My name is Mai Tao and I am one of the coordinators of the Fresno County Civic Engagement Table. There is a lot of important information that we are excited to share with all of you in tonight's Community Town Hall. And I really just want to take a moment to thank you all for spending a part of your Wednesday evening with us. So for tonight's Community Town Hall, I will run through the agenda. We will be hearing from the partners, sharing about who the Fresno County Civic Engagement Table are. And we will then hear a little bit about the purpose and the history of the Fresno Speaks survey. After that, we'll give a little bit of context background about the Fresno landscape before we dive deep into the Fresno Speaks survey for this year, 2020, and we will have a special guest presenting the survey key findings. After the survey key findings, we will jump into a questions and answers session for about 10 or 14 minutes, and then we will close up tonight's evening with an invitation to next steps and ways to connect with the Fresno County Civic Engagement Table. So we're excited that all of you are joining us for our program tonight and being a part of this virtual community town hall. Before we dive into the rest of the program, I would actually like to note that this event is recorded and the recording will stay on the Facebook page or the YouTube platform that you are actually viewing from. And also, throughout the event, if you make any comments on the live video, those comments will actually show up on our back end and we will be able to see and then hopefully be able to respond directly during our questions and answer section. So please stay interactive with us throughout the community town hall through making comments, reactions, or any questions that you have throughout the program. So now I would like to transition to one of our partners to share more about who the Fresno County Civic Engagement Table is. I'm passing it over to you, Nancy.
Hey everyone, good evening. I'm Executive Director for the Community Hmong in Innovating Politics. Is one of 5 parts of the Fresno County Civic Engagement. Also, referred to as together we are a multi-generational coalition integrated voter engagement and on again all the diverse communities in Fresno are for too long been ignored. Since 2020, the Fresno relentlessly to gather data from residents of academic and research and finished 3 cycles of information to share with Fresno community leaders and community-based organizations, those striving to engage, improve the lives of all residents. By the results that residents are growing as priority issues in our communities. This week's survey highlights that more table is committed to needs, including how to make it more accessible and more policies that are reflective of the.
Thank you, Nancy, for that introduction. I just want to note that we might have had a little bit of technical difficulty hearing Nancy, so we might have to circle back to you, Nancy, but for now, we're going to go ahead and move forward. Thank you so much. So again, one of the amazing partner organizations introduced the collective group. I will actually now ask each of the partner organizations to have a representative share out a little bit about each of the organizations. So the first organization or the first person that I would like to call up is Pablo. Pablo, if you can share a little bit about who you are and which organization you're with.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Pablo Rodriguez. I am the Executive Director of Communities for New California Education Fund. We are a 501c3 charity. We work to create neighborhood committees to finish unfinished neighborhoods. We have offices in Fresno, Stockton, Sacramento, and in the Coachella Valley, and Merced, forgive me. Um, and that's who we are. Thank you very much. I'll throw it back to you.
Thank you. And the next person that I'd like to call up to do introductions is Monita.
Hello, everyone. My name is Monita Porter. I'm the Assistant Deputy Director at the Fresno Metro Black Chamber of Commerce, where we service Black-owned and minority entrepreneurs in the greater Fresno region. Our mission is to engage, educate, and empower Black businesses through advocacy, technical assistance, and capacity building services. Thank you.
Partner Monse.
Hi, everyone. I'm Montserrat Sanchez, but I go by Monse. I'm an organizer with Faith in the Valley, and I'll tell you guys a little bit about Faith in the Valley. So Faith in the Valley is a multi-faith, multiracial, and multi-generational coalition of Central Valley congregations covering over 200 miles from San Joaquin to Kern counties, organizing in unity for our region's most vulnerable families and communities, and for a Central Valley that truly protects, values, and includes everyone. Faith in the Valley's path to building a more just world involves teaching people of faith how to build and exercise their own power to address the root causes of their problems. At Faith in the Valley, we believe this struggle for justice is rooted in our faith. Thank you.
Great. And Nancy already did an introduction for herself, but I would love for you to reintroduce yourself and also give us some.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hmong, Innovating Politics to advance social justice and families through our leadership development, generational community organizing here with you all. Thank you.
Great. And we have one more partner organization that wasn't able to join us in person at the moment for our virtual town hall. That organization is actually Jakara Movement. Jakara Movement is a grassroots community building organization working to empower, educate, and organize Punjabi Sikhs and other marginalized communities to advance their health, education, economic, social, and political power. We strive to create a Gurmat-inspired community rooted in the struggle for our foremothers and forefathers to develop powerful, informed, and organized youth leadership, locally rooted residential power, and community capacity that will be a key partner in building a better future for all. So Jakara Movement has many offices actually based throughout California, and we're so grateful that they have their amazing youth center right here in the city of Fresno. All right. So those are our 5 amazing partner organizations currently a part of the Fresno County Civic Engagement Table Coalition. Hopefully you learned a little bit about each of them. And now we will actually move forward to talk about Fresno Speaks. And I would like to invite Pablo Rodriguez, Executive Director from CNC, to share a little bit about the history and the purpose of Fresno Speaks and really the main reason why we are all here tonight for tonight's community town hall. Take it away, Pablo.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to take a moment to share the purpose and history of the Fresno Speaks survey. Fresno Speaks was born from a lack of sustained empirical research on the rural areas of California. We needed a way to gather unbiased information on the needs of families in Fresno. We needed a way to ensure that there could be a voice for every neighborhood at City Hall. Since our first representative survey of the city of Fresno voters in 2020, we have learned a wealth of information. And as we expected, we have learned the ways different people in different neighborhoods view a common priority issue. For example, public safety. It isn't enough to say that the neighborhoods and families in those neighborhoods want safety. As you will see in the report's results, what respondents have told us is, for example, within the Black communities, families see safety through the issue or the lens of jobs and economic prospects, not necessarily more police. Latino respondents of the survey see safety starting at the school level and continuing through through educational opportunities. In 2018, for the first time in its history, the City Council of Fresno became majority Latino. This was a dragging indicator of what many of us already knew, and many of us attending tonight have known for years. The city of Fresno is in transition. Our next speaker, Hatsune Aguilar, will provide an update on current demographics of the city. It is important to note that in 2020, the Fresno Speaks survey correctly captured a changing attitude towards political views. The 2021 survey correctly predicted a majority of the city voters would reject the recall of Governor Newsom by a margin of 57 to 43%. The final certified results were 56 to 44% against the recall of voters in the city of Fresno. Tonight, we present the results of our third annual survey. Undoubtedly, the question will be asked what we as a coalition will be doing with the survey results. And yes, we will discuss that tonight. But I would like to impress upon you a question, I believe just as, if not more important. What will you, who are watching tonight, do with this information? Who in your family will you share the results with after you download them from fresnotable.org? Who in your neighborhood will you share the results with? What issues affect you and your family? What issues will you raise to your appointed or elected officials? And then finally, maybe the most important question, will the appointed and elected officials have the courage to listen to the results, to listen to you? Thank you very much, and thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Pablo, for sharing that really helpful information to just really learn about the context and the history and the need for this type of information. So I will like to now transition over to my co-coordinator, Hatsune Aguilar, to share about the landscape of the city of Fresno, where our survey has been focused on in the last 3 years.
Hello and good evening. So before we discuss the results of this year's survey, we would like to take a moment and look at who lives in Fresno and who this survey data represents. So I'm hoping that we can bring up the slides. Thank you. Next slide. The city of Fresno is steadily increasing. It is home to more than 544,000 people, and it is the fifth largest or highest population of any city in California and is the 11th largest Latino population in the United States. The diversity that is present in Fresno is also important to note, which you'll see on the next slide. The majority of the population here in the city of Fresno is Hispanic or Latino at 46%, or just over 240,000. Fresno has the second largest concentration of Hmong people in the United States and a significant Punjabi, Sikh, and Black or African American population as well. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that over 144,000 residents in Fresno primarily speak Spanish at home, and in total, almost 42% speak a language other than English at home. In the next slide, we can see that Fresno's eligible voters are slightly more female and are younger. Over half of eligible voters are 18 to 44 years old, and just over 51% are female. Something else to notice is that while women in the state of California earn 88 cents for every dollar earned by a man, you can go to the next slide. In certain areas and progressions in the Central Valley, they earn as little as 70 cents for every dollar earned by a man. Just want to point that out, given that the city of Fresno is slightly more female, and this is important to understand as we also look at the survey results. I will pass it back to you, Mai.
Great. Thank you, Hatsune, for sharing some of the existing demographic data for the city of Fresno. For those of you who are watching live, if you have any reactions to that data, or if there are any specific questions that you might have even related to the Fresno landscape data, would love for you to, again, comment on the specific Facebook or YouTube page that you are tuning in right now. That stuff will pop up on our back end and we'll capture it and try to, again, directly answer during the questions and answers section. But really, really great data, Hatsune, to provide the context of the city of Fresno, as now we will segue into the main portion of our data from the Fresno Speaks survey. We have a special guest from one of our partners that we worked with to gather the data and analyze the data. We are really excited to be able to bring on the Chief Executive Officer for Data for Social Good, Jose Bedoya, and he will spend about the next 25 to 30 minutes reviewing the key results from our Fresno Speaks survey that, again, we were able to collect data from Fresno residents, over 1,800 Fresno residents. So Jose, take it away.
Thank you, Mai, and thank you to all the groups for allowing me to be part of this project. It's a very exciting project. I've been involved with the project in the background a little bit, so I knew about it and I wanted to be more intimately involved. So let's start our slides if we could. So let's jump right into the project itself. So we did this survey over the summer, end of June, beginning to about end of August. Let's go to the next slide, please. And let's set it up a little bit and see how we collected this question. So these were mostly in-person or phone surveys, live surveys, as well as a supplement of online questionnaires. Let's go to the next slide. So let's take the results from a macro citywide perspective. Next slide, please. So let's set this up. So as May mentioned, we had 1,850 respondents to our survey. So what I'm trying to do here in the first set of data is to say, look, how does this compare to what the city population is? So for Hispanic and Latino, let's just take that as our first example. The city actual is about 39%. Our survey hit about 32%, which is fairly decent. For the white Caucasian population, we oversampled. We, in terms of the numbers, 36% versus the city versus 39% of the actual respondents. For Asian Americans, we were just pretty close, just under 10%, 10.5% is the city actual, and our respondents were 9.1. For the Black and African American population, the city population is 3.6, but 8.4% responded. So that was a very good showing for the Black community there. So let's, on the right-hand side, we have the different age groups, and we'll talk a little bit more about that next. Next slide, please. So what we wanted to do is to set it up in terms of how the male-female ratio was, as well as the age group ratio. So what we find is that, like the city of Fresno, our survey was slightly more female. It's within a couple of percentage points from the actual target, so that's very good. And we have a normal distribution in terms of ages, in terms of how the respondents were, and whether we had to wait it or not later on. So with that in mind, again, we adjusted the survey a little bit just to make sure that we're spot on, or as close to spot on, to the actual city of Fresno. Next slide, please. Okay, so we started the questionnaire with question 2. Which issue in your city has led to the largest, has had the largest negative impact on your household? We gave folks a bevy of choices, and we asked them to choose one, okay? Force them to choose their number one solution, number one problem, what have you. So by and large, affordable housing was the largest single determinant for that, 20%. And again, affordable housing and cost of rent are issues with the respondents. The second issue was homelessness at 18.4%. Again, two issues very interrelated in terms of cost of housing and homelessness and all that and what have you. And the third determinant was crime and gun violence at 16.9%. As you can see, it trails off with city infrastructure, environment, jobs, and personal finance, coronavirus, access to infrastructure, and systemic racism. But let's look at this in a little bit more detail. Let's go to the next slide, please. So what we wanted to do is to say, okay, some of these things may impact or affect different communities differently. So for example, we broke this question down by ethnic group, and we saw that COVID-19 was more significant for Black African Americans than Hispanic or Latino residents. We see that crime and gun violence was more significant for white residents as opposed to Latino, Asian American residents. And affordable housing was more significant for the Black, Hispanic, Latino than white residents. So again, we see the point of comparisons, and we took this to mean that all these issues do not have the same impact across the board, and so different parts of the city are affected differently by these issues. And this is an example. So what we try to do is to have a 95% confidence interval, some statistical significance to say this with certainty, this is what is happening in that community. Let's go to the next slide. So similarly, what we wanted to see is that, for example, jobs and personal finance was more significant for Black and Asian Americans. Environment and air quality was more significant for white residents than Black, Hispanic, and Latino residents. And systemic racism was more significant for Black residents in comparison to all other groups. So again, just to round out that the whole level of each individual community pockets and what's been important to them as they took the survey and responded to their personal situation. Next slide, please. We also asked, so do you know of city or county resources available with affordable housing? So of those people who said affordable housing, we asked them then what percentage. Only 42% of residents know where to find city or county resources, and open for those who are struggling with housing as an affordable housing concern. So then we narrowed it down a little bit more and said, okay, well, those who don't know, let's go to the next slide, please. So again, following this up, which groups in particular are informed of where to find resources. So what we found is that the, people of color, generally speaking, were not informed at a statistically significant rate compared to whites, and this was especially true for Latinos. So again, we asked people who said, no, we're not, we don't know, and we broke that down into their ethnic cohorts. So again, this goes with the theme that different communities are looking for different kinds of information and help. Let's go to the next slide. One of the questions we wanted to say is this, okay, how do you see reduction of violence? Because that came up as a theme. And so what we found in the survey is that overall, Fresno residents were moving towards an environment of sustainability and help to their fellow residents. So 26.4% of the residents said more mental health would be an effective way to reduce violence within the community. And the second place was more job opportunities for persons on probation, parole, or formerly incarcerated, okay, as their biggest themes in terms of how to reduce violence. As you can see, we also have a couple of things, trailing targeted programs at school, more job opportunities, more funding for law enforcement, and public and community violence prevention programs. But more, all in all, is Fresno residents want to build each other up, at least according to the data. Let's go to the next slide. So then, again, we wanted to break this down a little bit more. And how does this impact each individual group in terms of their responses to that question? So we broke it down and we found that white residents were more likely or significantly more likely to choose more funding for law enforcement than any other ethnic group or race. Black and Hispanic Latino residents were more likely to support more job opportunities for those affected by the carceral system than white and Asian residents. And Asian residents were more likely to support solutions that include public funding for community and violence prevention programs. So again, we see that slightly different emphasis by each group. Again, the notion here is that each group is affected or impacted differently depending on the personal situation. Next slide, please. So we also asked about existing programs within the city. So the Advanced Peace Program was overwhelmingly supported by 89, almost 90% of respondents. They basically thought this was a great program, and less than 10.9% responded that they do not want the program to continue. So again, overwhelming support for that program, and these are the kinds of things that were mentioned prior, in terms of some of the programs that might be best solution for the overall, and best solution specifically for certain ethnic groups, ethnic cohorts. Let's go to the next slide, please. We also asked about Measure P. So Measure P is one of the city measures to, where there's this additional taxation for residents. And we asked what would be the best situation or best solution for them. So how do you want to expend your tax money? And so what we found is that 49.5% believe that overall picnic areas would be the best use from Measure P. 19.1 wanted to have expanded soccer facilities. And then the top three, it was 13.7 said refurbishing basketball courts. But again, these were different depending on which cohort or which part of the city you saw or you lived in. So let's go to the next slide, if we may. Okay, so what we wanted to see is then what groups wanted to see what kind of expenditure for Measure P, or where they would have their preference. So there's a lot of places of commonality, and there's some places of difference. So overall, as you can see on the left-hand side, expanding picnic areas was by far, by all cohorts, the most favored. And what we find is that then perhaps in certain areas, there's difference. Like, for example, expanding soccer facilities, we've mentioned as the next one. So this is preferred by Latinos, as well as white cohorts within our sample. A little bit of difference here. Building volleyball courts was preferred, or most likely significant for, more significant for Asian residents than white and Latino cohorts. And Black and African Americans, Asian Americans were significantly more likely to choose basketball courts as one of the places to spend their money. And lastly, a couple more significance, Asian Americans said they were more likely to choose cricket. Black residents said they're more likely to choose football fields than, say, for example, their white cohorts. So a little bit of difference in terms of what each community might see as important, but overall, the big takeaway here is improving picnic areas, existing facilities. Let's go to the next slide, please. And then we did something similar for Measure A in terms of how to spend the money, how to best spend the tax dollars that people pay into the city. So we wanted to ask them about, again, a different bevy of choices here. The top three choices, just as an example, is number one, mental health services, overarching support for that. The second thing was improving streets and sidewalks. That was important for folks. And the third one is more summer youth programs. As you can see, those are the kind of the top three that are very, very close to each other. And then other more police and improved bus routes, et cetera. But from this point, from here, what you can tell is that there's a continuation of mental health services as a through point, after school programs as a through point, and we'll see a little bit more detail here. Let's go to the next slide, please. So when we broke it up again by ethnic cohort, what we find is that a couple of things. Number one, white resident vote would have voted to include more funding for police. Black, African American, Hispanic, Latino were more likely to choose after school or summer youth programs. And improving infrastructure was more significant to be supported by Latino or Asian American residents. So again, slightly different priorities, but overall, again, mental health seems to come up as a pretty stable solution for all groups. Some differences depending on which cohort it is in what area, but overall, fairly steady for mental health services. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So one of the things we wanted to see is then how, or do people understand how to reach or how to contact their city council representative to address some of the issues that they see within Fresno. So the good news is that 61.9% said definitely yes or probably yes. But still 30.9% said probably not or definitely not. And what we worry as researchers is then question on the right-hand side is the definitely not number seems to be fairly high. And so we wanted to break it down a little bit more. And so let's go on to the next slide so you can see where and what groups. So overall, let's look at the positive side. So on the positive side, whites know definitely know how to contact the representatives at a statistical significantly point. Latinos were more likely to contact the representatives as compared to Asians. And conversely, on the right-hand side, what we find overall statistically significant is that people of color of all stripes we're not as likely to know, or definitely not likely to know, how to contact the representative. So that's something to think about in terms of, getting a full sense of democracy here. So I think that's where we would like to where we see some potential ways of some potential improvement areas. Let's go on to the next slide. And lastly, what we wanted to know is then, great, important issues. We applaud your civic engagement. We applaud your being involved in the survey, and thank you for sharing your opinions, but are you likely to vote? So what we find is that 85% of respondents said that they either that voting is either extremely important or very important, and that they're likely to vote in the next general election. Only 5.2% said, it's either slightly important or not important at all. And 10% are undecided about that question, whether or not voting is important, especially for this general election coming. So the takeaway here is that it sounds like Fresno residents would like to be more involved. They're more likely to think that voting is important. So they're civically minded overall, and again, trying to take care of not only themselves, but the data seems to indicate that they would like to build the community. They would like to build and share, help out their fellow residents with mental health services and other services that to ameliorate everybody's problems, reduce violence, etc. So that's our takeaway from the data, and would love to invite any questions you may have in the public.
All right. Thank you so much, Jose, for sharing the really important results from the Fresno Speaks 2022 survey. Again, I'd like to invite everyone who is viewing live and streaming into our community town hall tonight virtually. If you have any reactions or if you have any specific questions related to any parts of the presentation or the data set tonight, please go ahead and if you're on the Facebook page or a YouTube page, the comment section, type in your question so we can actually receive that on our back end. Everything is centralized and coming in. So we did see some stuff already. This is the time that I would like to transition to our Q&A session. So please continue to chat into your comments on Facebook page so we can get those questions. And I think I will go ahead and transition to Hatsune, who will facilitate our questions and answers.
Thank you, Mai, and thank you, everyone. There are some comments coming in, and one of them is from Anna Wells, and she asks, why are the violence prevention programs broken up into two different answers? That it seems to underemphasize the desire for it. And I'm wondering if we could just bring that slide back up, or if, Jose, I'm wondering if you can reference it.
Thank you for that. If I understand the question well, Anna, so violence prevention programs came up in two situations. One, generally speaking, in terms of where would you like to spend your time or money. Here we go. So this is question one, violence prevention. And so the idea here in the prior slide is a generic slide that talks about overall If you go back one slide, please. So here it's just broken down into generic, every group. And then what we did here is then take this generic number and broke it down by folks and what kind of folks were supporting what kind of areas. So if I understand your question here is violence prevention programs is 10.2%. And then what we talked about is, more opportunities for persons on probation parole. So they're just two slightly different categories of voting there. So all we did in the second slide is to then break it down into racial categories or ethnic cohorts, if you may. I hope I answered that question.
I think that you did. Thank you, Jose. Appreciate that. Another person, Juan Navarro, just asked if you could explain a little bit what the term statistically significant means.
Right. So it's what that means, and without going into too much math here, is that it's not by accident that this number is greater. It's this number is greater, by a margin significantly enough in terms of your two-tailed distribution. And I'm doing math again, sorry. But the idea being that it's not by accident that that number is bigger than all the other numbers. And it means something more from a statistical perspective, meaning that we're fairly confident that that one is right at a 95% level, if that makes any sense. So we're fairly certain that this answer in this group is answering this question vis-a-vis everybody else higher and more confident than on that response. I hope that answers that. Thank you, Juan.
Thank you.
I
think that's helpful. Glenda Jackson is asking, is Fresno in line with how the rest of California feels about affordable housing? I think what she means is just in terms of, we saw that it's the top issue or in the top 3 issues that residents prioritize. And I'm wondering, Pablo Rodriguez, if you could talk a little bit about where Fresno falls in line with the rest of California on some of these topics, but especially around affordable housing.
Yeah, of course. I think that the answer is brief, right? What we're seeing across California is a housing crisis and a need and lack of housing, right? Lack of housing and lack of affordable housing for sure. So I think that with the residents, what we are understanding and what we'll understand more with town halls and events with our own organizations is that what people are asking for is, yes, there's a need for affordable housing. There's a need for local government, state government, federal government to do what they can with the tools that they have available to rein in the housing crisis and make sure that people are no longer paying 30%, 35%, 40% of their income to be able to make ends meet. Or as what we discussed last week during the press conference for Fresno Speaks, that we have multiple families living in the same home in order to be able to pay rent, in order to be able to make ends meet. So I think that the answer to that question is yes.
Thank you. And thank you for, there's a lot of conversation and I think reaction to what people are seeing and hearing about what Fresno residents are prioritizing, and then also how they would like to see funds be used in the city of Fresno. And I think Diana asks a really good question, which is, after seeing these results, what issues will the organizations be prioritizing and how can residents get involved? So I'm wondering, I think that each organization could probably give a little bit of information about how someone can be involved, but I'd like to throw it to Monita to start us off.
Yeah, absolutely. I know at the Chamber, we have several workforce development programs that are coming down the line. The most exciting, we have a food truck that's coming down the pipeline where we're going to be having some folks come in and do some sessions in reference to like anyone who's interested in learning about foods and food safety, and we're going to have someone to lead a workforce development program around that. Also going to be letting our entrepreneurs who may not have the capacity to have a food truck to be able to utilize that truck so that they can participate in events and make money off of that. We also have the economic mobility program where we're investing in transportation, bikes, electric bikes. We're going to be the hub of that. So we have several workforce development programs coming down the pipeline. I think I just spilled some tea, but that's okay. We also have a number of youth programs that are entrepreneurial based. We have entrepreneurship programs currently, and we also have programs that are focused on rehabilitation and getting folks who are recently incarcerated or affected by incarceration, getting them acclimated into some entrepreneurship program and some rehabilitation programs as well. So we have a number of programs that we are already focusing on, but we definitely have partnerships as well that are in alignment with a lot of the key issue areas that we seen through this survey, such as the Housing Authority. And so we definitely look forward to continuing to partner with them to make sure that this information is shared and that we do what is necessary for the longevity of our residents and keeping folks in their homes.
Thank you. I think that the work that you are mentioning really touches upon all of the different aspects that were included as important to Fresno residents. So it makes a lot of sense that there's a lot that your organization is working on and a lot of ways that people can look forward to connecting with you and your organization moving forward. Montse, can I throw it to you for Faith in the Valley?
So at Faith in the Valley, right now we've been focusing a lot on like affordable housing. I think a lot of us are facing like affordable housing like crisis issue, whether you're like a homeowner, renter, displaced. We're working a lot on those issues and really like accountability on all levels of government to really push for not only building affordable housing, but actually creating habitable conditions of affordable housing. So you guys can connect with us by sending us a message through Facebook. We respond to those often. We work with a lot of congregations as well. So if you see any of us at a congregation, just want to send us, say hello to us and like tell us like what interests you about housing. Another issue that we are working a lot heavily on is restorative justice, so like advanced peace and thinking of different ways of like community, like thinking like differently on like restorative justice and like police accountability, like community policing, and really caring for your community in a different way, like that doesn't always include systems of oppression. So yeah, there's various ways that, and if you have any issue that you'd like to work on and maybe your community is interested on like, hey, we want more sidewalks in our community, feel free to let us know and we could try to work together to start organizing on that issue as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Pablo, can you speak to this for CNC and CNC education funds? Work on these issues that have been expressed as top priorities, and then also how residents can become involved?
Yeah, I'll start with how residents can be engaged with the coalition and coalition member organizations. I think Bonsa did a great job of highlighting, right, that we each, through the platform that you're on right now, where you're watching, you can message us and somebody from that organization will follow up. I would also encourage everybody listening to navigate to fresnotable.org. Click onto the section that says Fresno Speaks. download the report that's just been presented, and you'll be able to see the information that was presented. We will also be providing further detailed per district information, right? So you'll be able to continue to follow up. But what's important when you download the report is that you will be prompted to input your information. Somebody will then, from the coalition, be able to touch base with you, and we will be able to maintain contact with you as we continue to work on the priority issues, just the way that Monse was advising earlier. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Yes, please visit fresnotable.org. Nancy, anything you would like to share about how people can become involved? And then also just, how is Hmong Innovating Politics approaching some of these priority issues?
Yeah, I can share a little bit more. Hi, everyone. Nancy Zhang with HIP again. I think we're definitely interested in learning more about and prioritizing just expanding after school and summer youth programs, specifically around mental health services. We just are slowly transitioning out of the pandemic, and I think what we're seeing is that our young people are needing more mental health supports, and so we'd love to see how in the next couple of years, like what that support could look like for our young people in Fresno County, seeing that there is a high need. So yeah, just really interested in how we can expand those needs and really create an environment for our young people to thrive. And I think for how folks can get involved, we are always looking for volunteers to walk with us, phone bank with us, to speak with other voters in the areas that we're phone banking and canvassing in. And so lots of opportunities to get involved with us in that capacity.
Yes, the November 8th election is right around the corner. We are definitely interested in connecting with, and we are, I think all the organizations are connecting with family members and neighborhoods in Fresno, just to become involved. This is just one way of expressing your priorities and needs, and becoming, and also expressing those through your vote is also important. So yes, that's wonderful. There is a question also from another person just asking, how can I receive information about future cohorts? And Mai, would you like to chime in on that?
Sure. So the partner organizations that are part of the coalition at the moment, this is not necessarily a space where future organizations cannot be added to this coalition. So I just want to be clear about that. We do have 5 great, amazing partner organizations a part of the coalition at the moment, but the work is really focused on creating a foundation to do civic engagement work in the city of Fresno. So if there is any interest in being involved in our work on an individual level as a volunteer, there is that opportunity. And I think that the partners are also open to engaging with other community-based organizations in the area that could add value to the work that the group is currently doing, or to expand any external partnerships and collaborative efforts. So we don't have necessarily any specific information about like cohort with the coalition. It's really an ever-growing kind of coalition with partner organizations that are right now community-based organizations, and really, organizations that have expertise in working and serving in particular neighborhoods or with particular communities in Fresno. So I would encourage, again, that if you have any questions as an individual, or if you work for another community-based organization in Fresno, or if you are a stakeholder, or if you belong to any other institution, like an academic institution in Fresno, or another business, and you're really interested in supporting or uplifting the work or being a part of our work, I think we're open to connecting with you.
Definitely. Thank you, Mai. Imelda Cruz is asking, can you reshare how the Latino community is expressing their concern over housing and if there's any data that really points to that. So I'm hoping, Jose, you can just
Okay.
revisit that data.
So the slide that's on here is about knowledge about affordable housing programs, eviction, or for those resources about these types of things, right? Foreclosures or housing in general. So if we go to the next slide, then we said, okay, well, let's break that number down a little bit more in terms of how each cohort is thinking about this. So on the Latino side, we see that the knowledge base for knowing about programs from a citywide perspective or from a county perspective is 60%. So basically said of those people, people who said, no, I don't know, they just don't know how to get there. So Latinos in particular are a fairly significant number. As again, we talked about this number statistically significant, but statistically significance just means that we're very, very sure that number is correct. And so what we see is housing is one of the root points across the board for all groups, but it's one of those for Blacks, Latinos, and Asians in particular who are expressing lack of information there. So one of the things to think about is, how to get that information out to folks in terms of, as a potential results. But what the research says is that they're concerned, generally speaking. I hope I answered your question, Imelda.
Thank you. Thank you for diving into that again. I think that's, important to revisit. Nico Madrigal is asking, what do you mean by affordable housing? And I'm wondering, Monse from Faith in the Valley, if you can elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, so like the official definition according to the government, it's like you shouldn't be using more than 30% of your income for your housing, but we know that it's not true. A lot of families, unfortunately, are using like 50 to 60 or having to live like multiple families in a household to just be able to afford and have housing or a roof over their head. So what we mean by affordable housing is for families to not have to do these things, to not have to use so much of their income, work multiple jobs, have to live with other relatives just to have a home. We want that threshold to be less. We want homes to really be like matching like your wages, and like so that folks don't have to go through all of these situations. And maybe sometimes folks have to like make a decision. Do I purchase food for my family or do I pay rent? And those are the scenarios that we don't want families to go through. So when we say affordable housing, it's like all these scenarios, we don't want them to happen. So what can we do to really create that a situation where folks aren't using so much money for rent, aren't using their money for this or that, making those harsh decisions. So affordable housing, it is like we really have to imagine like how can we create that, and what is like the threshold, the income threshold for families to really be able to live safely and honestly have a safe home, a roof over the head, and also enjoy everyday life, like be able to rest with their families, be able to enjoy their families and just feel good.
Thank you. I think you're just also reminding us that housing is more than just having a roof over your head. It's really having a home and being able to thrive and be a participant in your community. So thank you for that. Is there anyone else from the partners on now who would like to add to that, or if you have anything else to add, please do. But I think that honestly, Montserrat, you covered that so well. So thank you. All right. I know that there are other comments, and we are really glad to come back to them and reach out separately. But we will go ahead and let that be our last question. So I will pass it over to you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We are getting close to the end of our program for today. We don't want this to last, any much longer for your evening. So we do see some more questions coming in. Please continue to ask questions or comments, and someone, hopefully from the table, will be able to return back any particular questions that you might have after the event today. So I also just want to take a quick moment now. At the beginning, when we opened up, Nancy from Hmong Innovating Politics did share about the collective of who the Fresno County Civic Engagement Table is, but there were a little bit of audio issues with her introduction. So I definitely, again, want folks to understand the collective of all of these 5 partner organizations that currently make up the Fresno County Civic Engagement Table. So I'm going to circle back really quickly to Nancy and invite her back on to share a little bit more, just again, context and background around the table.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Mai, and my apologies for my audio. Just not working earlier. Again, my name is Nancy Zhang, and I'm the Executive Director for Hmong Innovating Politics. The Fresno County Civic Engagement Table. So we're one of 5 partners, and we also refer to ourselves as the Fresno Table as well. We are a multiracial, multi-generational coalition focused on integrated voter engagement, voter education, and also on get out the vote efforts within the diverse communities in Fresno County that have been far too long been ignored and excluded. Since 2020, we've worked relentlessly to gather accurate representative data from our residents in partnership with academic research institutions. We have 3 cycles of reliable information to share with Fresno community members, decision makers, and community-based organizations like ours who are striving to engage, activate, and fight to improve the lives of our residents. Again, we're just really, really excited and energized about the results, and especially you all being super engaged and really interested in knowing more about, what Fresno's most diverse residents are really interested in, and like where we're also seeing a sense of unity around priority issues in our community. However, the Fresno Speak survey also, it also highlights just the additional work that needs to be done, and we're fully committed to making sure that city resources are more accessible, and more policies are reflective of our community as a whole. So yeah, just really excited to have you all here with us.
Thank you, Nancy, for revisiting that context. So now you've learned a little bit about the Fresno Table, Civic Engagement Table. You heard some really dense data results from our Fresno Speaks survey. And I'd like to transition to invite Monita to talk about what are some next steps for the group, and especially for the folks who are tuning in. Some of you have already asked, right? How can I get more information, or what can I do with you all? So Monita, if you can share a little bit about those next steps.
Yeah, absolutely. Good evening. My name is Monita Porter again. I'm the Assistant Deputy Director of the Fresno Metro Black Chamber of Commerce. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We are nearing the end of our program. I'd like to invite you all to continue writing it in the comments, any questions or reactions you may have to the information that was shared tonight. We will continue to track all questions that we missed, and we'll follow up after the event via the Fresno Table's social media platform. With that being said, if the survey results or data moved you in any way, empowering you to learn more or get involved in our work, please visit fresnotable.org website and sign up for upcoming opportunities to participate and get out the vote. You can also comment in the chat, continuing to add your comments, add your contact information so that we can reach out to you as well. We will continue our work engaging with community members, and we'll be sharing this data with the City of Fresno electeds and key staff. You can join us for more meetings to share your experience as a community member in Fresno. If any of this data resonated with you or stood out, it is very critical that electeds and city staff not only see the numbers from tonight's data, but also directly hear from you as a resident and listen to your story and solutions that will make Fresno better. So additionally, we invite you to volunteer with our organizations, to advocate with you as a Fresno resident that represents your priorities and your voice. As we approach the November 8th election and beyond, we will continue to shine a light on communities' experiences and priorities that guide our work. So thank you so much.
Great. Thank you for that, Monita. So again, we have some important next steps, connecting with electeds, connecting with key staff from the city, connecting with other institutional stakeholders in the city of Fresno. And if you want to be a part of that, that is our call to action and our next step for all of you after joining us tonight virtually. So we're really excited for those opportunities. A lot of hard work to come, leading from now into a very important election cycle, and to wrap up the year. But know that our work doesn't end with an election cycle. It doesn't end by the end of the year. This is continuing. So we're excited for you to fold in at any point in our work and our process. And thank you for some of the folks who have already put some contact information. So we'll reach out to you. But I will just close out the event with information again for any of you who want additional information or to even download and view our Fresno Speaks survey results and report. So we have this now in a tangible digital form for you to download if you want to print it out. We have a 2-pager of an executive summary, and you can find all of this at our website, which is www.fresnotable.org. And our website is the best way for you to stay informed with our work and connect with us to get involved. We also just recently started our social media platforms, so we're really excited to engage with you there. So the platform is at Fresno Table on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So feel free to tweet at us, feel free to send anything our way via social media platforms if that's the best way for you to communicate. And then lastly, you can also directly email us. So the best email to get in contact with us is info@fresnotable.com. So we really just want to thank you so much for your time and participation in the evening. I know this is probably even during dinner time for most of you. So really appreciate that you all took the time to join us tonight. The Fresno Speaks survey has been an opportunity to provide a voice for every neighborhood in the city hall. And, it's one of the most comprehensive surveys that has been conducted in the city of Fresno. And like I said earlier, for this year, 2020, the survey gathered data from over 1,800 residents, right? So that is a really, really big number in all parts of the districts or all of the different districts in the city of Fresno. So we will continue to elevate findings and community voices that will create solutions and include the diverse communities of Fresno moving forward in our work. We look forward to connecting with all of you, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you for joining us for our Fresno Speaks 2020 Virtual Community Town Hall, and we look forward to many more events with all of you. Thank you, and have a good night. Bye, everyone.